Om Amitabha Om, Buddha of infinite light, may meditation on the red ray of love open the lotus of the heart. Om Amitabha Om. Re! Thank you all for joining me, and I'll keep an eye on some people who might be popping in as we go along. This is part three of Verities of Being. This is Shakta. So Oxford doesn't do too bad a job. Does a decent job. Definition: Shakti, the female principle of divine energy, especially when personified as the supreme deity. Now I would say okay, but drop principle, and instead I would just say Shakti is the divine female energy or the cosmic energy. And then I would drop the especially and the deity and just say the supreme goddess. So Shakti, the divine female energy, the supreme goddess. Oxford, you're welcome. Meanwhile, Merriam-Webster fails badly. Merriam-Webster fails badly. The dynamic energy of a Hindu god personified as his female consort. Uh, the dynamic energy of a Hindu god personified as his female consort. Not consort. And if any consort is in this, it would be the other way around. The broad Merriam-Webster definition, broadly, cosmic energy as conceived in Hindu thought. That's better. I mean, the primary definition is horrific, but the broader definition is acceptable, although conceived in Hindu thought. I won't even go into the word Hindu, but conceived in Hindu thought should really be conceived in uh, Sadhana thought as experienced in yoga, asana, flow, tantra, bhakti, mantra, or just as experienced in yoga, asana, flow, tantra, bhakti, mantra, etc. Merriam-Webster's definition, primary definition of Shakti is dull-witted and insidious. but it but it gets worse. Check who's coming in here. It gets worse. Collins' American definition of Shakta, or Shakta, a person who worships Shakti as the wife of Shiva. Merriam-Webster, in a weird pedestrian way, is closer to the mark on Shakta. Merriam-Webster says Shakta is an adherent of Shaktiism. Well, better. Adherent and ism don't really work for us, but still it's closer. Although the term worship is pretty square and pretty dualistic. Here's some clarity from an excellent essay by Sally Kempton, and there'll be a link to the full essay in the text version of this, which I'll put out on Substack after we're done. This is Sally Kempton. Quote, the true power of the feminine is the power of the Shakti. As an interior face, she exists equally in both men and women. Yet most of us are unaware of her and therefore unaware of the creative potential of our lives. We begin to touch into Shakti when we tune into the energy inside our body. We go even deeper as we set ourselves to experience deeper forms of inner inspiration when we begin to listen to the guidance that can flow from the deepest core of ourselves. The yogic teachings on Shakti are particularly relevant to this contemporary moment in human history. The word Shakti literally means power. Shakti, the innate power in reality, has five faces. It manifests as the power to be conscious, the power to feel ecstasy, the power of will or desire, the power to know, the power to act. It goes on from there, and I commend the essay to you. But like I said, I haven't. In talks over the years, yeah, over the years, and I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody because they're still coming in. Okay, we're good. We're good. In talks and writings over the years, I have suggested that the three most important symbols for our, what I call our emerging global wisdom tradition, are the yin yang, the triple spiral of the triune goddess, Celtic, and Shakti Yantra. So here it is, the Shakti Yantra. Now I'm laughing to myself because I'm now going to quote the Vedas. And there's a perverse pleasure in this, I confess, just as in the first two of these four talks, I briefly quoted the King James maybe three or four times. The Vedas, after all, stand right at the imposition of a false patriarchal narrative over the naked truth of our primal reality, the beginning. And for millennia now, this superimposed facade has warped the entranceway globally, not just the Vedas or the King James, globally. Uh, not in totality, but global reach. This superimposed facade has warped the entranceway to the portal of what we really are, essentially, primordially, what we really are, limiting our comprehension, our access, and our experience, and often installing a toll for that access. Nevertheless, there is, of course, profound wisdom in the Vedas. And consider this which I have drawn from it. I am the queen, the gatherer up of treasures. They know it not, yet I reside in the essence of the universe. I rouse and order battle for the people. I rouse and order battle for the people. I created earth and heaven and reside as their inner controller. On the world summit, I bring forth the sky, the Father, sky. My home is in the waters, in the ocean as mother. Thence I pervade all existing creatures as their inner supreme self and manifest them with my body. I created all the worlds at my will without any higher being. and permeate and dwell within them. The eternal and infinite consciousness is I. It is my greatness indwelling in everything. Now, it's the Deva from the Deva Sukta. Now, I have extracted this passage. I've scraped away language from around it, language framing that I don't feel belongs in the 21st century, in this time of the great shift, which is driven by, among a handful of other things, the ascendancy of the feminine. But there it is. It's in the Vedas. Shakti is speaking to you from the Vedas. I pervade all existing creatures as their inner supreme self and manifest them with my body. I created all worlds at my will without any higher being, and I permeate and dwell within them. Oh, and the author of the Devi Sukta, this Rig Veda text that speaks to me, a text foundational to both Shaktiism and Advaita Vedanta, full spectrum, is a woman sage, not a rishi, rishika, Vak Abrini, Vak Abrini. So check again for books. So there are three different versions of how the Shiva Sutras came to us. In late 8th century, in late 8th century or early 9th century Kashmir, some say Shiva taught it to Vasagupta in a dream. Others say it was one of the Mahasiddhas that taught it to Vasagupta in a dream. Third version, the version I embrace, is that Shiva told Vasagupta to go to a mountain, to go to the Mahadeva mountain, and there he would find a rock with the Shiva Sutras inscribed on them. A rock with the Shiva Sutra inscribed on it. That rock is still there, but there is no evidence of anything ever being written on it, which makes perfect sense to me. There are such stones throughout the world. In Words of Power, I wrote, one happy memory I have, writing about my childhood, one happy memory I have is a few times I went to my grandmother's house in the country. There was a big stone outside. It sat under a big tree by the side of the road. And while the muggles were inside doing whatever it is that muggles do, I would go out and sit on this stone under this tree out by the road. And they would come out and they would ask, "What are you doing?" I was 7 or 8 years old. And I would answer, "I am meditating." I am meditating. I have no idea how I even knew that word at that time, at that age, but that's what my answer was. And I meant it. Sometimes they would come out there and they would find me crouched against the big stone with my ear to the surface. And they would ask, "What are you doing now?" And I would answer, "I am listening to the sound of stone." Anyway, the Shiva Sutras is the source of all of Kashmir Shaivism. All of Kashmir Shaivism flows from the Shiva Sutras. Now, the legendary American sage Joe Miller and I studied the Shiva Sutras and the 3 other vital texts that flow from it. There'll be links again in the text. In the Miller's living room late at night, it was the language we used to communicate with each other. Joe would come across a particular stanza or some bit of commentary on a particular stanza, and in the light of that particular sutra or commentary, We would discuss internal states one of us or both of us had experienced or were moving toward. I don't recommend reading the Shiva Sutras. The best translations, Jayadeva Singh, for example, and of course there will be people who give me an argument, but Jayadeva Singh, for example, great theosophist, uh, are very dry. Another excellent translation is I.K. Tiny, who's also a theosophist, by the way. They're very dry, though, and technical. It's as if the text only opens, only reveals itself if the internal state you are reading is is imminent or has already arrived. Anyway, looking at the title now, I tell you with absolute certainty that Shiva Shakti Sutra, Shiva-Shakti Sutras, would be a more accurate title. And indeed, Shakti Sutras would be as apt as Shiva Sutras. And indeed, that's how it presents itself now to me in my psyche. The ultimate reality is prakasa and vimarsa at the cosmic level, the planetary level, the species level, and yes, the level of primal reality of what we each individually are. Ultimate reality, prakasa and vimarsa, occupying the same space. Consciousness and action, consciousness and energy, stillness and movement. And that's simplified, but you get the sense of it. And all the tattvas and everything else flows from this. Now, in Shadow, the first of these four talks, you might remember that if you were with us, that I spoke about what I call the table of erroneous correspondences. The list is there's quite a few things on, quite a few items on that list, but top of the list is the table of erroneous correspondences. At the top of that table is yin, I'm going to simplify them, yang, active, yang, male, yang, sky, male, active. Again, I'm abbreviating, I'm going to go on for a while. Yin, uh, earth, female, passive or receptive. Well, and we spoke about how I spoke about how that really is a table that needs to be fixed, needs to be updated with new information. But these two images are striking and worthy of note. So this is not an uncommon image. This is Kali striding over Shiva, dancing on Shiva, walking on Shiva, because Shiva is prakasa, consciousness. And Kali is energy, Shakti, movement, action, power, awareness and energy, consciousness and power. She, Kali is on top, Shakti is on top. And which I hope the definition, the dictionary folks at Oxford and Merriam-Webster and American Collins are paying attention. And then the other image, the Adnari, I spoke about and wrote about in Words of Power and the talks that went into that work. And I held it up particularly 21st century because it acknowledges it's an ancient image, half Shiva, half Shakti, but one being, both male and female, And I thought it was important then for the 21st century in the sense of how our ideas and our experience and our viewpoints and our continuity in terms of gender is shifting and how gender is more complex than it is presented in the patriarchal texts and in fact fluid for many among many humans. So I thought Adnar is very important for the 21st century, but now I see it also just as important cosmically, because it's cosmically another way of representing this uh, primal reality at the cosmic level of Shakti and Shiva, of Prakasa and Vimarsa, of consciousness and energy. Okay. Yeah, just check again for people. Nope, don't see anybody. If you're out there and you're trying to get in, you could text me and I'll glance my phone. Right. So Shakti has many faces. She has many faces. Shakti is just one of the names. I'm using that doorway tonight. Shakti has many faces. She has many faces. One of her many faces is Shakti. Many faces, many names. For instance, Isis. I love this Isis, second century Isis. Um, it's Isis with the body of a serpent, lower body of a serpentine Isis. Of course, that serpent is very central image for Shaktiism. And then within these many phases and many names of the supreme goddess, which tonight we're defaulting to the one of the perennial names, Shakti, right? There's the dark goddess. So here's the Kali yantra and the Hecate wheel, Kali. How about this, Kali? From the 18th century Bengali poet Ram Prasad. All creation is the sport of my mad mother, Kali. By her Maya, the three worlds are bewitched. She is mad. She is mad, and mad is her husband. None can describe her loveliness, her glories, gestures, moods. Shiva with the agony of poison in his throat, the blue throat, chants her name. Shiva chants her name. The personal does she oppose to the impersonal, breaking one stone with another. The personal and the impersonal, two stones breaking each other. 18th century Bengal. And the wheel, Hecate's wheel, uh, Germanic, Egyptian, I mean, Germanic Greek, really Greek, and then up into the Germanic and into the Northern European uh, cultures, but originally Greek, goddess of the night, goddess of the moon, goddess of magic, goddess of crossroads, goddess of necromancy. And of course, see a serpentine labyrinth and the spiral at the center. Then I want to suggest to you a further, after hashtag Dark Goddess, which uh, many of us are familiar with and have relied upon in different ways, poetically and in terms of psychoanalysts and everything else. I propose hashtag Dark Green Goddess. Dark Green Goddess. taking it to another level, another dimension, right? So here are three. Umoja is one of the Yoruba deities of the Yoruban deities of Africa, and then from because of the diaspora into the Caribbean and into South America and various forms of mysteries of schools uh, in different cultures. But there she is. She is um, the giver of life and the metaphysical mother of all the Orisha within the Yoruba spiritual pantheon. Her name is derived from the words mother and child and fish. Mother and child and fish. That's literally mother whose children are the fish. And in the middle is Pachamama. It's a beautiful, in looking around for this talk, I came across this painting, Pachamama, from an artist who I was not familiar with, Giselle Stapleton, but I find it very compelling of all the Pachamamas that I looked through. And then the third one is a statue I have on my innermost altar. It's part of our culture these last couple of decades, 3 decades. The millennial Gaia of Oberon Zell. It's worth noticing here that all three of these images, these dark green goddesses, because it's about the earth, it's about the planetary intelligence. Each of our intelligences is what, like an atom or a, oh, let's just say an atom of the intelligence of the planet itself. We are existing within one being. That's science arrived at the, they could say theory of Gaia, but shamanism and mysticism and mystical poetry of the world has been waiting for that scientific revelation. But yes, the planet is alive, and the planet is intelligent, and the planet is one being, and we are all part of that being. So I say dark green goddess. Yeah. And anyway, all three of these images, uh, the Umoja 1970, that sculpture in Africa, the Gaia statue 2000, the Pachamama painting 2020, right? So all within the last half century. I find that very encouraging. There is one goddess who pre-exists the pantheon, pre-exists our species, pre-exists all but herself because all else is her creation. She is the only truly immanent divinity. She was the forging of the oceans, the flow of lava, the bacteria in the dark crevice organizing itself into the first neural network. And now, many billions of years later, whoever you are, when you look in the mirror, you are seeing only her. She is the divine intelligence. She is both the temple and the oracle within the temple. Her name was taken from the ancient mythoi by a 20th century scientist, but only her name. The rest of her new narrative is composed of scientific fact, corroborated by shamanic vision. In the south of America, she is known by another name, Pachamama. Gaia Pachamama is the only divinity which offers direct, irrefutable proof of her own existence every moment of every day, in every place, in all the world. That's something that's something you haven't read yet. Maybe next year, not this year, and maybe the year after next. Oh, it's already done. This composition came together randomly. The Sentinel and Deep I wrote about in the talk on the shadow, right? Yeah. dark green goddess. Okay, ways in which Shakti moves across the face of the sea of life. Of course, she's the sea and the life, but let's just go with that provisional symbol, as the Great Liberation would say, just for a moment. That's ways in which she moves across the sea of life. Her hand moves across the sea of life. We're going to go into some of the various ways that this power reveals itself to us and is accessible by us. And the first of these we'll talk about is prana. Now, Oxford defines prana as life force or vital energy. Okay. I say the breath within the breath. I say prana travels on the breath. I say breath travels on the prana. Both. In yoga, prana is also one of the five vayus. So the winds, the breaths, prana, prana is bringing in, the bringing in of the prana. And apana is the downward motion of apana. So the down, like downward dog, shows apana vayu. And samana vayu is the circular motion of prana, and you can see that in malasana, in the squat. And udana vayu, the vertical movement of prana. And you can see that in the tree. Well, yeah, yeah. I would say mountain, Udana Vayu. And then Vayana Vayu, think about warrior two. Arms outstretched, legs outstretched, right? The movement of prana. Pranayama, the science of breath, powerful practices, the glory of Ujjayi breath, the engine of Ashtanga and Vinyasa. And then there's Hamsa. Hamsa. 21,600 times a day. The commentary on the Shiva Sutras, Jayadeva Singh tells us we breathe 21,600 times a day ish. Outgoing, ingoing breaths, repeating the breaths. There is a sound on the breath. You can place the sound on the breath in your meditation, but it is actually there on the breath. Ham sa, ham, the exhalation, sa, the inhalation, although it hardly matters because they bleed into each other. Ham sa, so ham. Now, typically, the hamsa is literally swan, but actually, it's it's not wrong to say it's a swan, but it's more accurate to say even more technically accurate to say it's a bar-headed goose, which one of the highest flying birds in the world. It breeds in Central Asia, and then Tibet and Kazakhstan, and it winters in South Asia, down in India. Well, these three paintings are a series of, how many was it? Pardon me for a minute, I gotta look it up. They were 24 swan paintings done by Hilda af Klint from 1914 to 1915. She's just now being discovered by the world at large. It wasn't, few people have ever heard, let alone the hundreds of paintings and drawings. 20th century, early 20th century Swedish artist. She was painting abstracts, and she felt she was under the direction of higher spirits and believed the world was not quite ready for her radical art, but she probably never foresaw such posthumous acclaim as she's been receiving the last few years. People realize, my God, Kandinsky, Mondrian, all those guys, and here she was. Uh, so I just thought she belonged in this. And these paintings from her Swan series belong in this. but I just want you to remember the Hamsa. Remember 21,000. Remember every breath. You don't have to be conscious of every breath. It's not going to happen. You don't want to be conscious of every breath, but you want to be able to tune in to any breath and know that that Hamsa, that is the japa japa, the unstruck, like unstruck sound, not a Brahma. There's also the unstruck mantra. It's just going. Your being itself, your bodies, your five bodies themselves are reciting the Hamsa mantra 21,600 times a day. Okay, prana. Chi. You know what? Merriam-Webster does well with the definition of chi. They say vital energy, vital energy that is held, vital energy that is held to animate the body internally and is of central importance in some Eastern systems of medical treatment, such as acupuncture, and of exercise or self-defense, such as Tai Chi. Serviceable definition of Chi. We could have said prana and Chi are the same. It would be accurate. But it is also accurate to say that they are not the same. They are different. I could have just given you a look at prana chi rather than separate looks at prana and chi, like prana hyphen chi instead of just separate looks at prana and chi. I went this way, separate looks, because we principally access them in different ways. Vinyasa and pranayama for prana, and for example, and yin yoga and qigong for chi, for example. Prana, you think of as harnessing wind power. And chi, you think of as harnessing the power of the surf. These two charts are from a wonderful book, uh, Between Heaven and Earth, A Guide to Chinese Medicine, Beinfeld and Korngold, 1991. And there are five phases of yin, yang, rhythm, uh, and the rhythmic circulation of chi from day through night, through the five bodies and through everything in nature, but start with the five bodies, with our own, this temple that we are. You know, in yin yoga, saddle pose for 5 minutes, we're stimulating the chi flows through the great meridians in the body, which are like great rivers flowing through the body. Uh, you do the saddle pose for 5 minutes, you're simulating the kidney meridian. You do wide knees child pose for 5 minutes, and you're pulling on the tissue of the inner thighs and groin, you're working on the liver meridian. When we hold the dragonfly pose for 5 minutes, we're stimulating the spleen meridian as it flows up the inner thighs. Saddle pose, you're feeling that the kidney meridian, you're feeling it in the sacrolumbar region. These are just examples. Any one of the yin poses is doing multiple things at the same time, but you'll feel these areas stressed and stretched in those poses, in the holding of those poses. It just gives you a brief glimpse of how chi flows through the body. Now, this is something I've been waiting to do for a while, is to talk about Fohat. The first book of Philip Pullman's brilliant His Dark Materials trilogy was originally entitled Northern Lights, and indeed, the aurora borealis is integral to understanding the nature of the mystical substance, in quotes, for lack of a more apt word, substance, that Pullman calls dust. I commend it to you in all its forms in the 2007 film Golden Compass, in the BBC series 2019-2022, and also in the books themselves, the Dark Material trilogy, which is the daemon of Serafina Pekkala's And it says to the Egyptians in Golden Compass, witches have known of the other worlds for thousands of years. You can see them sometimes in the northern lights. They are part of this universe. They aren't part of this universe at all. They're that which, they're glimpses of that which this universe is held within. The sight filled the northern sky. Immensity of it was scarcely conceivable, as if from heaven itself great curtains of delicate light hung and trembled, pale green and rose pink, and as transparent as most fragile fabric. And at the bottom edge, a profound and fiery crimson, like the fires of hell, they swung and shimmered loosely with more grace than most skillful dancers. Uh, Philip Pullman there. Okay, what does that all have to do with Madame Blavatsky and the secret doctrine? Well, actually, Fawad is Fawad is a term from the language before Sanskrit, before Tibetan, before. So in the secret doctrine, HPP says, Fawad is the key, quote, the key in occultism which opens and unriddles the multiform symbols and respective allegories in the so-called mythologies of every nation. When you read about Fohat in theosophical texts, you'll also read about logos. In my view, for our purposes, Fohat and logos are equivalent to Shiva and Shakti and Prakasa and Vimarsa, consciousness and energy, occupying the same space, both at the macrocosmic and the microcosmic levels. And again, levels is like substance, we're just using it for apt, a better, more accurate term. HBB calls Fohat cosmic electricity. There'll be links for all this. She goes on to say the ancients represented it by as a serpent. Fohat hisses as he glides hither and thither in zigzags. Furthermore, in her commentary on the voice of the silence, HPB refers to Kundalini as the Fohatic power, foundational to everything in both the seen and unseen worlds. Don't indulge in any Adam's rib nonsense with this. Just see logos in Fohat as arising together out of nothingness and thenceforth occupying the same space. Gab yum in coitus. There's more on Fohat in the text version, but I'm going to move on because I want to keep us on track. Looking briefly at a couple of ways. So I talk about the pathless path. I embrace the pathless path. I encourage the pathless path. And I am of the lineage of no lineage. That doesn't negate or push to the side lineage or push to the side very well um, worn paths of specificity. And I'm just saying I talk about the pathless path and the lineage of no lineage. And I can't say you design your own path because that would be really foolish, but I can say that organically you live your life and organically, eyes open, consuming intellectually, somatically, experientially, karmically, consuming, you organically develop your own path, your own way. Taking those as Buddha, as Joe used to always love quoting Buddha saying, take what works for you and forget the rest. So this is a beautiful painting by a contemporary artist whose work I did not know until I was looking for images. Leasthana. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but her contact information is there. It's a beautiful painting of Layla, done this year, 2025. And this quote is from my friend Coleman Barks' beautiful, slim volume of some of the Poems of Lala Devi. With passionate practices, I held the reins secure on my mind and made the breath one column. Then the new moon's clear nectar descended into me, nothing, pouring into nothing. You know, she, well, let me just say this about her. Yeah, 14th century, early 14th century. One of the great poets of Kashmir, poet saints of Kashmir, compelled into an abusive relation, marriage at the age of 12. It's a theme in these talks. She wandered away in her early 20s, studied with a great Shavik guru, and mystical awakening accelerating. She soon left him in the dust and traveled alone, barefoot, living on alms only, also naked. She would emerge from the forest and sing her poems, as the songs, Vox, as the one I just recited to you. She would uh, speak them to the travelers, and word of her moved. And well, it's just there. It's a wonderful resource to avail yourself of. Tantra isn't about some version of Kundalini, quotes, Kundalini, unquote, coiled up at the base of your spine. Tantra is about the life of the five senses, and about the psyche soma, and about the alchemical processes that advance our evolution both as individuals and as species. Go into that in a little more depth in the text version, but I wanted to leave you with that. Uh, Bhakti, quite simply, the path of love, Bhakti. And just as a Shakta is a person in the path of Shakti, a Bhakta is a person in the path of Bhakti, love. Ishq among the Sufis, agape, the origins of Western civilization. Mirabai, an image of Mirabai, 16th century, one of the great Bhakti poet saints, right? Highborn, she married a prince. After he died in battle, her in-laws attempted to kill her, but she danced off with Krishna. She was also a child bride, by the way. I can't blame the colonizers. But she danced off with Krishna. Her powerful songs celebrate that mystical union. Sainted, Mirabai became a blazing beacon for a robust bhakti movement. Look it up, the bhakti movement. In all its health and vibrancy, democratic, small d democratic, diverse, inclusive, egalitarian, altruistic. The Robert, just as Coleman translated Lala Devi, Robert Bach, Balai did some beautiful translations of Mirabai early on, and it's a favorite of mine. I'll read to you. The colors of the dark one have penetrated Mira's body, all the other colors washed out. Making love with the dark one and eating little, those are my pearls and my carnelians. Meditation beads and forehead streak, these are my scarves and rings. That's enough. My teacher taught me this. Approve me or disapprove me, I praise the mountain energy day and night. I take the path that ecstatic human beings have taken for centuries. I don't steal money. I don't hit anyone. What will you charge me with? I have felt the swaying of the elephant's shoulders. Now you want me to climb on the back of a jackass? Try to be serious. Nearby. And another way Shakti comes to us, another way to access Shakti. We'll use the Sufi term here in Arabic word baraka. The Arabic word baraka. So yep. Merriam-Webster. Okay. The definition's okay. It's a bit muggleish, a bit pedestrian, but it's factual. A blessing that is regarded in various Eastern religions as an indwelling spiritual force and given a divine gift inhering in saints, charismatic leaders, and natural objects. I would say not just natural objects, but spaces, physical spaces, literally spaces. So you see, imbued with the grace of a great saint or a sage, the French caves in which Mary Magdalene dwelled after she fled north, or by the overflowing, ceaseless current of Gaia's own grace, Gaia's own Baraka, for example, Yosemite. In the upper left-hand corner is a photo I took of Uluru in Australia, one of the most powerful places on Earth. I could literally feel the rainbow serpents coiling there, nesting there as we circumambulated the immense monolith. In the lower right-hand corner, I took a photo I took at the Shrine of Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal. I had a profound experience there too. It was at the beginning of the war in Kosovo. Shout out to Alipa. I had lit one of the tall white candles and tossed it in. I was praying for NATO and the Supreme Allied Commander. It's just a fact, that was my prayer. I felt a presence next to me. I turned my head and I met the piercing gaze of a very old, leathered skinned Albanian woman. Truly a powerful crone. We looked into each other's souls and then she vanished. And I mean, she vanished because it's a huge square. And if somebody, or whatever way somebody was walking away from you, you would see them for 10 minutes in your field of vision, but there was no one. 1 minute she was there, and the next minute she wasn't. I remember seeing this picture, a photo of Mother Krishnabai, Mataji, when I first arrived in San Francisco half a lifetime ago. And I learned that Samuel Lewis, the American Sufi merchant and member of the San Francisco Lodge of the Theosophical Society and dear friend of Joe and Gwen Miller's, Sam had said she was the highest person living on the planet at the time. And I understood that immediately, viscerally. And remember the moment I first saw her picture, which was long before I knew who she was or what Sam considered that she was. And I've written elsewhere about the 36, which is something from the Kabbalah, but it's very important and very interesting. My Yoda, Joe Miller, used to talk about it every once in a while. Guru Grace is Mataji's autobiography, and I tell you, holding the book itself is Baraka, is you receiving a blessing and looking at her countenance in an image. You're receiving Baraka. And then there's this wonderful movie, Ron Frick's, it's 1992 documentary, no narrative, no voiceover, filmed in 24 countries, 6 continents, over a 14-month period. Find it online, watch it, rewatch it if you have to. It explains something that I can't explain, but I leave it here and meditate. Closing in now. We're here at the, and I did not know that this is where we would end, but this is where I mean, when I was preparing the presentation, I did not know where the presentation would end, but this is where it ends. So the Force. In Shadow, the first of these talks, I spoke of several important mythoi, including Star Wars, in terms of what light and darkness really are in relation to each other and within our psyche, soma, both individual and collective modern myths, 20th/21st century myths. I mentioned that in my creative imagination. I saw in that talk, I mentioned that in my creative imagination, I saw a theme weaving through a new Star Wars trilogy that I was projecting. Following this most recent one, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. And in this imaginary fourth Star Wars trilogy, Rey would return to the young woman Jedi Rey returned to the remote island where the library of the Jedi had been before Yoda burned it down, and where Luke had lived in seclusion until Rey found her way to him in the Force that awakens. And in that first movie of my imaginary fourth Star Wars trilogy, Rey finds a notebook that Luke had hidden there, a notebook that delineates new paradigms for living and working with and through the Force, a notebook in which he sorts out all what light and dark really are, what evil really is, all of it, a new dispensation for a new age. I bring it up here now because it occurs to me that all three of these talks address the subject matter of what would be in such a hidden notebook. In Shadow, the truth about light and darkness and evil. In Sita, the second talk, a litany of siddhis, the powers that all of us have, inborn, hardwired, integral to our primal reality itself. And in this third talk, Shakti, the diverse ways that the deep feminine cosmic energy reveals itself and flows through all creation on this particular planet. Prana, chi, foha, dust, kundalini, ish, yes, the force. And then something else occurred to me as I prepared this talk for you, another entry in Luke Skywalker's secret notebook, which, as I said, was hidden away by him so it would be found by Rey at the perfect moment, the moment that it would be most needed. In the context of what we have been exploring in these three talks, this Star Wars spin-off narrative would have a vital message. So there's a part of the Star Wars narrative that's beautifully told in the movie Rogue One, 2016, and the streaming series Andor, 2022 and 2025. Chronologically, Andor, the movie, comes before Rogue One. So if you haven't watched any of them yet, watch the series first and then the movie. But in the context, as I was saying, in the context of what we have been exploring in these three talks, the Star Wars spin-off narrative, Andor and Rogue One, has a vital message. The characters you will come to love on this storyline are resistance fighters. They are struggling to restore the Republic. They are democracy restorers. But they were not Jedi. This particular storyline within the mythos of Star Wars is about people who did not have Jedi training. There were people, and uh, and yet they offered themselves up. They risk everything. They struggle to overcome fear and doubt and hopelessness. They lean forward like Tagore's bird that could feel the light and sing while dawn is still dark, right? Their names were not known. Many of their heroic deeds would go unchronicled. They triumphed, even in defeat and despair. They succeeded in stealing the Death Star, the schematics for the Death Star. They succeeded in transmitting those plans to Leia and the rebel forces before they died. As they were dying, they got the transmission off. And that information, the schematics, would lead to a decisive victory down the road. They were not trained in the way of the Force. They could not levitate or read minds or deflect laser fire with their lightsabers. They could not move objects with their mind. Well, I would say not really moving it with your mind, but you know what I mean. They just had courage, which is another one of those inborn plug and play hardwired CDs we have, courage and desperation. They even strode into certain death. These people who were not Jedi in training strode into certain death, chanting, I am one with the Force, and the Force is one with me, as they struggled to get the schematics of the Death Star transmitted to Leia and the rebel forces. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. And it is. So it is, and so it was. The Force was within them, and they did move, and it did move through them. And we are all Sita, and we are all Shakta if we allow ourselves to live this life in, from, and through the primal reality of who and what we truly are. And just one last thing here in this on this slide, you'll see the quote is from the first Star Wars movie, 1977, and then first Star Wars trilogy, 1997. I think it's the very first movie, and the picture is from the middle of the third trilogy, the middle film of the third trilogy, Last of the Jedi, 2017, 40 years, exactly 40 years. And at the time of the first trilogy, it was all about Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke and Darth Vader and um, uh, the great Jedi. And they were, and Leia, there was a little, the hints that Leia was actually had the Force with it, the midichlorians, Jedi. But the third trilogy ends with this feral young woman who was living as a spaceship wreck scavenger on a desert planet. She becomes the origin story of the next arc of Jedi warriors. So it's another nod to the great shift, I believe, because you can make fun of Star Wars, you can make fun of Harry Potter, you can make fun of Lord of the Rings, you can make fun of me for spending so much time on them. But if this species survives, which is an open question, uh, they will future historians we'll look back on the myths of art, the great myths of our time, the transitional myths from 20th century to 21st century, of which those three and the Marvel universe as well, they're transitional mythoi. And they will look at them and try to understand them just like we try to understand from Gilgamesh and Beowulf, something very old, try to put our minds back into that culture and that time, but also see something that carries through all the centuries. And likewise, they will look back on these great myths. And they will have a lot more evidence to go on than a few things etched in stone tablets at a dig somewhere. So the last of these talks is on September 21st and is entitled Sponda. This talk, as Shadow and Sita also were, it'll be posted on YouTube, and it'll be posted. The video will be on YouTube, and the full text and the slides, and with links to material we're referencing and sources, all will be available through my Substack. So, we went 5 minutes over, really not really 5 minutes over because it was we waited a minute. So just relax with me for a few moments and take a gentle indrawn breath into the heart. You can feel the Hamza. Or if you prefer, you can breathe into your belly, filling up your belly through your nostrils. And then and when you empty your belly, you just drop your jaw. We're breathing into the heart, into the Hridaya, not the Anahata, the Hridaya behind, so to speak. The Anahata. Breathe into the heart, the sacred heart. Breathe in unconditional love. Breathe out unconditional love. Feel, hear and feel Ha Sa. I am that am I. Om Amitabha Om. Buddha of infinite light, may meditation on the red ray of love open the lotus of the heart. Om Amitabha Om. Re. In the Vajra, the heart be realized in this lifetime.